What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Tait Talk Sports Podcast, back with another NFL edition. Little overview of what we're going to talk about today. Look back at my Week 9 picks, see how I did. We're going to talk about what Lamar Jackson said over the weekend, as well as do a new bit. Instead of talking about a team, I'm going to say my top 5, basically a power ranking sort of thing. And then, of course, to wrap it up, do my Week 10 predictions. So first things first, Week 9 recap. I was 11-3 on my picks. Not too bad. Not my best, but certainly not my worst. I think two of the surprise games for me were Seahawks and Bills. Don't even get me started. I could talk for a year about what the Seahawks did wrong in that one. Just an ugly game. Hopefully they move on to next week. That's all I got to say about that one. Next game, obviously, probably the surprise of the week, probably going to end up being the surprise of the year because they somehow let a college football game go on Sunday Night Football. Obviously, I'm kidding, but I'm talking about the Bucks and Saints game, the one that ended up being 38-3. Only one field goal for the Bucks, and the Saints scored 38 points. I mean, it was a clinic. It was you couldn't believe what you were watching. How poorly the Bucks were playing. It wasn't even that the Saints were playing out of their minds. They were playing very good. Don't get me wrong. They were playing very good, but the Bucks were just horrific. And it showed in the scoreline and, just an ugly game all the way around. So next up, we got what Lamar Jackson said. He said that defenses are calling out the plays that they're running at the line. So basically what he's saying is the defense, before the offense runs the play, the defense knows what it's going to be, and they're calling it out so everyone knows what it's going to be. And a coach actually came out and said that that's not a big deal. It happens all the time. It's part of the chess match, is what he said. And I also think it's not a huge deal if they're calling out some. I'm sure that happens every week with every team. If it's happening on like over 60% of the plays, maybe you got a problem there. But I do think it's quite a normal thing. But at the same time, the Ravens are somewhat one-dimensional. If the run's not going, they can't really get the pass. So it's an interesting situation. I think people might be reading into it a bit more than they should. But I thought it was a cool headline, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit. All right, on to the new segment, our top 5. Obviously, you can see it over here. At number 1, maybe a surprise to some people. It was a hard decision for me. I was going back between the Chiefs and the Steelers, but I did end up deciding to go with the Steelers. I thought obviously the Steelers did not have a commanding win over a team that they should have in the Cowboys. They let up too many points, didn't score enough points. But I get the feeling that it was an off week. Obviously, a bit of a headline on Roethlisberger this week is that he's got COVID. Talk a bit more about that later. So it'll be interesting to see what comes up in the weeks. But I'm going to take this as a hiccup and see what happens. And I'm still thinking they're the great team that they were before the close win. Next up, obviously, number 2 is the Chiefs. I think they easily could have been number 1. I just think that the Steelers are a bit more rounded out than the Chiefs. That's why I went with Steelers number 1, but the Chiefs are an easy number 2. Should not be any lower. I think it's just that it's the Mahomes factor. No matter if it's a blowout or a close game, you've got Mahomes, you've got a chance. It's that sort of thing. They've got beasts at receiver. That defense needs some work, obviously. It was a close game against Carolina last week, but obviously they came out with the win. I think they're a powerhouse. It's going to be tough for anyone to beat them. So I got a number 2. Number 3 is the Saints, someone that I might not have even had inside my top 5 until that win on Sunday night. I just think seeing Breeze have Michael Thomas back, he seemed so much more comfortable. Whether it was because of Michael Thomas or not, who knows? But he had Michael Thomas, and he was hitting him on the slants and the outs. And you can make fun of it all you want. It works, and he felt comfortable. They were making passes down the field. The run game wasn't even dominating, and which is usually what gets them wins is Alvin Kamara, but they still obviously dominated. So that's why I got Saints at 3. 4, Bucks coming off a big loss, huge loss, as I talked about earlier. But similar to what I said with the Steelers, I think it's a bit of a hiccup. I mean, how many times in Tom Brady's career has he put up 3 points and given up 38? Very little. And I got to see it as a hiccup. And the other reason is that I still have them so high is they just have so much firepower on offense. They've got Gronk. They've got Mike Evans, Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin. Leonard Fournette, Ronald Jones, just so many weapons on offense. And that defense, when they're playing even decent, is a great run stopping defense and decent against the pass. I just think on paper, they're such a good team. It's hard to knock them out of the top 5. And number 5, I think is debatable. I might have a little bit of bias here, but I went with the Seahawks. Obviously not a great win last week. Not a great win. Not a great loss last week. It was an ugly game. Russell Wilson did not play great. But I think last time we saw him play a bad game, came out the next week and just had another stellar performance. So he might have lost his MVP. I don't think he has, but it might have lost his MVP. I don't think he's going to play any worse. He's still going to be Russell Wilson. And I think that defense, a lot of people don't know that was the first week that the defense as a whole was really playing all together. It was Jamal Adams. It was Carlos Dunlap, a few guys on the defensive line coming in, and there are still a few subs from injuries. That was the first time they were playing all together, and it was ugly. Don't get me wrong. It was a horrible performance, but I think they have a lot of room to grow. They've got a lot of pieces. They just have to find a way to play together. And the defensive coordinator needs to do a bit of a better job calling the game. All right. Going into my week 10 predictions, first game we got is tonight, probably done by the time this gets uploaded, but it is Colts versus Titans on Thursday Night Football. Fun little matchup here. Two teams that are pretty good. Titans a bit better than the Colts, I think. Colts doing decent. Not a great win, not a great loss last week, losing to the Ravens, although the Ravens are a great team. But the Titans are a really good running team. Obviously, like I've talked about all year, they know who they are. They run the ball, and they hit you in the face on defense. I think that defense is struggling a bit more than it was supposed to. But they just picked up Desmond King the other week to bolster the secondary. Obviously, signed Jadeveon Clowney this year. I think that the Titans are a great team. Colts are also a pretty good team. They seem to get hurt. T.Y. Hilton isn't playing well. I just think they're still a bit too all over the place to get a win against a team like the Titans. So in this matchup, I'm taking the Titans. Next game, we got Texans versus Browns. I watched a bit of the Texans game last week, and it's very ugly right now. They've got a few stars here and there. Obviously, Deshaun Watson, you got J.J. Watt, and really that's it for the superstars. I mean, they've got very quality players in other positions, but they've just got those two stars, and around them is just kind of guys who don't seem like they're doing it at a high enough level to really get the success. And the Browns, on the other hand, haven't been doing too great either. Obviously, they've lost Odell Beckham, but I think on paper they are still a much better team. Baker Mayfield very up and down this year, but they are likely to get Nick Chubb back this week, barring any setbacks. And I think the Texans just cannot play the run well enough, and the Browns, that's kind of their game plan. Hopefully the run works. If not, then pray that Baker can throw the ball. But I think against the Texans, this run is going to work pretty good. I'm taking the Browns. Next game, we got Washington versus the Lions. Kind of a boring game. Not the greatest of teams. Washington is a somewhat fun team to watch with Terry McLaurin, and it's a great story in Alex Smith at quarterback. And the Lions are, just kind of very mediocre. They've got Matthew Stafford, good weapons at wide receiver. The defense is very young, very inexperienced. I think that both of these teams are kind of lackluster, but I do think the Lions have a bit more experience, at least on offense, a bit more weapons on offense. So in this matchup, I'm going to take the Lions. Next game, we got Bucks versus Panthers. Bucks hoping to come away with a big win, of course, after the loss last week. Panthers wanting to come away with a win after the loss last week to the Chiefs. A closer loss, but still a loss. Normally, if I looked at this after the week that the Bucks had, I would take the Panthers, but it is most likely that the Panthers will not have Christian McCaffrey this weekend after only getting him back for 1 week. And that 1 week he came back, he was a star. But he's most likely to be out again this week. Mike Davis is a very serviceable backup, but he's not Christian McCaffrey. And if they did have Christian McCaffrey, I would be very inclined to take him. I would think this is an upset. But because they don't, I think the Bucks have so much superpower. Brady's going to be mad. Doesn't always work in his favor, but Brady's going to be mad. I think the defense is going to be mad. They're going to want to come out and play. I'm taking the Bucks. Next game, we got Eagles versus Giants. Divisional matchup in the worst division in the NFL, but a divisional matchup nonetheless, and one that is going to help decide the leader of the division. Right now, it is the Eagles, but it's going to make an impact in that division, which is just crazy. But the Eagles are getting a lot of their hurt players back this week. Miles Sanders most likely coming back. Alshon Jeffrey could come in and play. He hasn't played all year. They're going to have Rager at wide receiver, the rookie that they drafted. Their defense is still up and down, but that defensive line is stellar. I think they're just going to get a lot of people back versus the Giants. Obviously, still without Saquon. Daniel Jones still making a bit too many mistakes to really, start playing at a super high level. I think he's got a ton of potential, but he's got to cut down on the mistakes. And that defense is a lot better than people think. I think they're a very good defense. I think they're going to create probably quite a few turnovers in this game because Carson Wentz is so prone to turning it over. But I do think it's probably going to be a close one, but I think in the end, it's going to go to the Eagles again. They're going to pull farther ahead in that division. I'm going to take the Eagles. Next game, we got Jaguars versus Packers. Jaguars coming off a fun game versus the Texans because they started looting a quarterback because Minshew had some fractured bones in his hand. Probably going to start him again because he actually played well last week. But the Packers are just a much better team on almost every level. They're still weak against the run, but I don't think the Jaguars are good enough running it to really take advantage of that. And obviously the offense speaks for itself. Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, and Aaron Rodgers, obviously. Just a great team, outclasses the Jaguars in almost every way. I'm going to take the Packers. Next matchup, we got Bills versus Cardinals. This will be a fun game to watch. Two very offensively talented teams. Cardinals coming off a bad loss, Bills coming off a great win. The Cardinals are very good offensively, but that defense struggles to stop teams. They struggle to stop the Dolphins. And the Bills coming off a great offensive week, as most teams do, playing Seattle. But I think the Bills defense is a bit more sturdy. That offense, as long as Josh Allen can throw it, is a bit better. Not by a lot. If anything, it's a tie because of how good Murray and Hopkins are, obviously. I think this one is going to be a shootout, but I think when it gets close, I think the Bills are going to take it. I'm going to take the Bills. Next game, we got Chargers versus Dolphins. This is a fun quarterback matchup with Herbert and Tua. It'll be an interesting game. Two young teams that are kind of feeling out their seasons. I say Dolphins have a bit more of a chance than the Chargers do because of how many close games the Chargers have lost. But it's definitely going to be a fun matchup. Fun guys on both sides. A lot of guys on COVID reserve for the Dolphins. But I still think it's going to be a fun game. I think it'll probably be somewhat of a shootout, not necessarily high scoring, but I think it'll be a close one. And the Chargers have proved this season that they just can't come away with wins in those close ones. So in this matchup, I'm going to take the Dolphins. Next game, we got Broncos versus Raiders. This is a fun matchup. I think the Raiders are a very sneaky good team this year. Despite them stacking up wins, people really still aren't talking about them. Derek Carr is playing great. They've got a good running back in Josh Jacobs, Darren Waller, and that defense is not the greatest, but it's definitely playing well. And the Broncos are very young. Drew Lock isn't good till the fourth quarter. Jerry Jeudy is a stud at wide receiver. And that defense is very up and down. I think Broncos as a whole are very up and down throughout a game. So for that reason, I think the Raiders are much more consistent. I'm going to take the Raiders. Next game, we got Seahawks versus Rams. This is one that will be probably a shootout again, as long as the Seahawks can keep it up offensively, which I don't doubt that they can. The Rams are a great offensive team, not so flashy, but they get it done more than good enough. That defense is great. They're coming off a bye, getting 2 weeks to plan against the Seahawks team. Obviously, the Seahawks are a great offensive team. And if they can make that defense even play just a little bit like they did against the 49ers, I think they're going to be able to put up quite a fight against this Rams team. The Rams defense is a great defense. It'll be a lot of fun to watch this game. I think it's going to be a shootout, probably a lot of scoring. But obviously, could you have guessed it, I'm going to take the Seahawks in this one. Next game is a fun one. I'm looking forward to watching if I get the chance. Bengals versus Steelers. There's a caveat on this game, and I'm implying that Roethlisberger plays because if he doesn't, I'm going to take the Bengals all the way because if he's not playing, then I don't think that offense scores enough points to beat Burrow. But I'm going to imagine Ben is playing. The only reason he wouldn't play is because he's on COVID, and if he tests positive, in the next couple of days, obviously he can't play on Sunday. But saying he does play on Sunday, it's going to be a really fun game to watch with Burrow and Ben. It's going to be fun to see how Burrow deals with the pressure, because that offensive line is not great, and the defensive line of the Steelers is the best in the NFL. It's going to be fun. I think a lot of cool plays are going to happen, but I do think the Steelers defense is going to be able to stop them more than enough times. And I think as long as Ben's playing, that offense is going to get some scores here and there, and they're going to take it. I'm going to take the Steelers. Next game is 49ers versus Saints. Saints coming off a great win, obviously, and the 49ers just keep getting more and more hurt. I think it could be a fun game. You know, the 49ers aren't bad by any means, and the Saints obviously a great team, but I just think the 49ers are too hurt, and the Saints are getting Michael Thomas is back. They've got Kamara. That offense is going. That defense is going. I just think they outclass the 49ers right now with all their injuries. So in this matchup, I'm taking the Saints. Next game, we got Ravens versus Patriots on Sunday Night Football. This will be a fun one to watch with Lamar Jackson and Cam Newton. As long as the Patriots at least have some of their players back, didn't have any of their players on defense back, and almost lost to the Jets on Monday Night Football. So it'll be an interesting one. Might be fun to watch with the two quarterbacks, but I think the Ravens are going to be able to run on this team because the Patriots just don't have their defensive tackles or linebackers. And when the Ravens can start to run, that opens up their pass. And when their pass opens up, it's very hard to deal with Lamar Jackson. And I think that defense is going to be able to stop Cam, be able to get in his face, make him miss passes. So in this game, I'm going to take the Ravens. Last game on Monday Night Football is Vikings versus Bears. This is a fun matchup. I think it's a very interesting matchup because the Vikings, when they can run the ball, they're an amazing team. But when they can't, very subpar. And the Bears on offense, very subpar. But on defense, they are great on that defensive line. They've got Akeem Hicks, Khalil Mack, other stars. They've got great linebackers with Roquan Smith. Pretty decent secondary with Kyle Fuller. It's an interesting matchup because I feel like the Bears are going to be able to stop the run. And when the run gets stopped, the Vikings struggle. Not that they can't do it, but they definitely struggle. But I think the Bears offense is so mediocre right now. Foles is very off and on, very streaky. I think in the end, the Vikings, it's probably going to be somewhat low scoring, but I think in the end, the Vikings just kind of wear down the defense as the game goes on. The run kind of gets going. They hit a few passes and they score enough points to take the win. I'm going to take the Vikings. Thank you guys for watching. As always, I'll make another one of these next week, see how I did on my picks, and of course, look ahead to week 11. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.